Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. A Cree woman from a small community in Manitoba was the victim of a violent robbery in Winnipeg earlier this month. Dina Gott was approached at gunpoint and then shot while walking in the city's West End. Gott is now recovering, but the experience has wounded her emotionally. APTN's Brittany Hobson has her story and a warning. Some of the images in this piece are disturbing.
Dina Gott was only supposed to be in the city for one night, but a violent robbery and attack changed that. On June 18th, Gott was staying at her brother's in the West End when she went for a walk around 11:30 at night. She says a man approached her and asked for directions.
And I was already on my Google map and I said, "I'll help you." And he grabbed my phone and quickly took out his gun and said, "If you try to take this back from me, I'll shoot you." I said, please, no, give me my phone." And he shot me.
Gott was shot in the neck. The man ran off. That's when the 35-year-old was able to get help.
I made it to my brother's door and I just fell, I couldn't even lay down. I sat there and I said, "I've been shot." My brother ran to me and he held me, and right away he stopped the bleeding, squeezing me.
Gott was transported to hospital where she woke up a day and a half later. The bullet entered through her neck and miraculously went straight through and exited out of her back. She spent a week recovering. She was unable to talk or eat for several days. But it's the emotional impacts that will stay with her.
I had to force myself to I'm okay. I'm gonna make it. But in the back of my head, this thing bothers me. And as time progresses, I realize now it's PTSD.
Gott is in touch with Winnipeg police investigators, but says they have not been able to identify the shooter. She worries everything from the shooting to her interaction with officers on the scene reinforces a negative stereotype.
There's that stigma there that Native women are nothing and that they work the streets, and that's not true. The cops are continually asking me, were you drinking? Were you doing drugs? Were you on your way to do drugs? Questions like that.
Gott is out of hospital and recovering before heading back to her home community, Chemawawan Cree Nation. The mother of 4 is leaning on family during this time. And despite the traumatic experience, she is ready to move on.
I decided I'm not gonna let this phase me, I'm gonna use this to make myself better.
Winnipeg police told APTN they have not made any arrests, but will be releasing more information at a later date. Gott described the alleged shooter as a shorter Caucasian male in his mid to late 20s with short blonde hair. He was wearing a black hoodie at the time. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg police have now released some new information regarding that violent robbery and attack. Dina Gott was robbed at gunpoint on June 18th in the city's West End. As you just saw, she was shot in the process but survived. Police have released this surveillance image seen here of a person they say is of interest in the investigation. Police say the suspect appears to be a white male, 5'4" to 5'8" in height, with dark hair and a skinny build. He appears to be wearing a light-colored shorts and a black hoodie. Anyone with information should get in touch with Winnipeg Police. The Supreme Court of Canada denied an application from 3 First Nations in BC that hoped to appeal the federal government's second approval of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. But the nation's leaders say they are undeterred and will continue fighting for their rights. Jamie Pashagumscum reports.
The Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh Nations and Coldwater Indian Band say Canada has not fulfilled its duty to consult and does not have the community's free, prior, and informed consent. In an online press conference today, chiefs said they are frustrated and disappointed, but not surprised by the decision from Canada's top court. Eugene King is the lawyer representing the First Nations. He says the whole process is flawed, and it lowers the legal bar on the duty to consult.
To rely on Cabinet, to rely on the decision maker to decide on whether their own consultation on their own project was adequate is, I think, to put it lightly, trusting the fox with the hen house, so to speak, and that's challenging. To have the government be the judge, the jury, and executioner on this.
Minister of Natural Resources, Seamus O'Regan, spoke with Coldwater Chief Lee Spahan today. He says the government will do everything it takes to keep Indigenous communities safe.
That we'll continue to engage on this. The federal government has a duty to regulate here, to monitor, and to make sure that we engage with communities. And when we understand that this is a contentious project.
Tsleil-Waututh Chief Leah George Wilson says the fight is not over and that the Tsleil-Waututh have more work to do.
This decision doesn't alter our Tsleil-Waututh Nation law. It doesn't change who we are. It doesn't change what we do. It doesn't change the fact that that's our inlet and it's our responsibility to protect our land and water. That never changes.
George Wilson said the chiefs will consult with their community members on their next move, and they are considering other legal actions. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The sentencing of an Alberta Mountie convicted of assaulting an Indigenous man in 2017 has been delayed. The assault was recorded on a security camera, and a warning here, some may find the video triggering. Tamara Pimentel reports.
Caught on a Slave Lake detachment security camera is RCMP Constable Lichio Soros assaulting Vernon Labucan of Whitefish Lake First Nation while in custody. The incident happened in 2017, but Soros was charged with 1 count of assault later on in 2019. He was later found guilty. Rory Ziv is Labucan's lawyer.
So when I watched the video, my reaction is one of disgust. Putting aside the racial issues that are currently ongoing, this is a case where we place our trust and our confidence in police officers. And when they do something like this, it is a serious breach of trust in the public's confidence.
Soros was scheduled to be sentenced on Monday, June 29, but that has been delayed because Labucan is currently in custody in Peace River for assault and second-degree murder charges of another individual. He couldn't attend the court date as he has COVID-19 symptoms and is in quarantine.
I actually couldn't believe what I was watching. My client didn't remember the incident, so he didn't tell me about the incident.
The assault happened while Labucan was intoxicated after throwing a sweatshirt at the constable.
It was just by good fortune that we put the CD that we did receive into a computer and watched what happened. But there was no reason for us to actually look into this because our client didn't relay to us what had happened.
The RCMP says Soros, an 8-year RCMP veteran, has since transferred out of Slave Lake and that his duty is unchanged.
My client doesn't wish any ill will upon the officer, but we would obviously like to see a carefully and well-reasoned sentencing position by the judge.
The sentencing has been delayed to July 15, 2020. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
With systemic racism and police brutality in the spotlight across North America, one Indigenous woman is working toward a career in policing to fill the gap between Indigenous people and the RCMP. Here again is Tamara Pimentel with this story out of Lethbridge, Alberta.
6th Avenue South to 5th Avenue
22-year-old Autumn Jerry is a team lead for the Lethbridge Watch. The team is eyes and ears for Lethbridge Police, EMS, and the fire department.
So we like to do our check-ins with everybody, they kind of have like their favorite hangout spots that we will just generally go and check in with them just to see if they need any assistance.
For Jerry, this is more than a job. It's a step toward her lifelong dream, becoming an RCMP officer in her home community of Siksika Nation.
You know, growing up on reserve, you hear a lot of bad about RCMP or any type of police officer or anybody in authority for, you know, and so I kind of wanted to break that gap between Aboriginals and First Nation policing.
It all started with her grandfather, Leonard Good Eagle, a retired Mountie.
You know, grew up, he was like, oh, we had, you know, retired police dogs that lived in his house, or he dealt with this on the reserve, and it was kind of more of that factor of like, ooh, that's so cool, I want to do that too. But being out here, it's a lot different, you know, knowing that you can change people's mindsets with just saying hello.
With recent events shining light on systemic racism and police brutality across the country, Jerry says Indigenous cops are needed now more than ever.
Everything's not going to be good, to say the least, but once you start kind of, you know, working with everybody, educating them, you know, when people make mistakes, you know, just making sure that they're educating themselves. That was kind of my main reason of why I wanted to join, was I didn't want, you know, Aboriginals to grow up in communities where they don't trust police officers. Can you mark me down for a public service location check at the public library, please?
Jerry finished her criminal justice policing diploma at the Lethbridge College. She says working with the Watch team has boosted her confidence in creating a positive relationship with the public, a skill she plans on using while policing in the future. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Lethbridge.
U.S. President Donald Trump was visiting Mount Rushmore for Independence Day. The visit comes amid calls to remove the faces of the presidents carved into the Black Hills. More on that after the break. Welcome back. Across Canada, people have been protesting the symbolism of statues, past leaders and colonizers, and they want those statues gone. In Regina, 2 women have been doing their part to remove one of the country's most famous and most controversial leaders. APTN's Priscilla Wolf has the story.
This is Carrie Belgar Lukunachow. She's been here 14 days now at the John A. Macdonald statue at Victoria Park in Regina.
It's a peaceful sit-in, we call it. We invite the public to come and sit with us, and we have been here every day, and we have also approached the City Council. We've been there twice, and we have no response.
Star Andres has also been here every day with her to peacefully protest the statue of John A. Macdonald being on display.
We came out here to have John statue removed. We'd like it to remove for what he stands for. We don't want to destroy it. We just want it relocated maybe to the museum or to the ledge.
Andre says his statues across Canada are shameful, and they represent a man who started residential schools.
He wasn't a very nice man. He was our first prime minister, but he created the residential schools. Great Chapon had to carry a permit to walk on their own land. They made residential schools through priests and nuns, and those priests and nuns did bad things to the kids.
Belgar Lukunachow says they cover the face of the statue because she was told by her chief that's what to do.
He told me to put that over his head because he should not be looking at us while we are trying to, you know, take him down. And across Canada, you know, like, none of them should be up because of what he stands for.
They plan to continue the peaceful sit-in until Canada Day, but after that, they will keep trying. They started an event page on Facebook called Dear John that outlines what John A. Macdonald stands for to Indigenous people in Canada. Priscilla Wolf, APTN National News, Regina.
And as people are demanding colonial images and statues removed, the federal government is renaming a Coast Guard ship with the help of the Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq chiefs. The Canadian Coast Guard will rename the icebreaker Edward Cornwallis, and they're asking Mi'kmaq chiefs for suggestions. The announcement came from Fisheries and Oceans Minister Bernadette Jordan. Edward Cornwallis, who founded Halifax in 1749, offered a bounty against the Mi'kmaq people. In 2018, the Cornwallis statue was removed from downtown Halifax. Chief Terry Paul, a Member 2 First Nation, said removing the name is a step forward.
We don't feel that it's rewriting the history or erasing history, but in fact it's acknowledging the horrific history of injustice and inequality that took place in our country's past, some of which still exist today.
For many Americans, the Mount Rushmore National Memorial in the Black Hills is an inspiring destination, even a shrine of democracy. But for the Great Sioux Nation, the faces carved into its sacred land is a reminder of a country that cannot keep a promise or treaty. Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Chairman Harold Fraser is calling for the removal of the American presidents carved into the sacred hills. In a statement, Fraser said Lakota see the faces of the men who lied, cheated, and murdered innocent people whose only crime was living on the land they wanted to steal. The chairman's statement comes at a time where a global discussion is underway about monuments to former leaders. It also comes just days before U.S. President Donald Trump is set to visit Mount Rushmore. And South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem had a message to those, she says, threaten America's shrine of democracy. Not on my watch. Noem says security will be in full force before and after the president leaves. Noem says the conversations underway right now about monuments are being directed by, quote, a radical movement committed to undoing our nation's history. Fraser, in his statement, said we are the ones who live under the stare of those who have wronged us, while others have the privilege to look away and move on. As many as 7,500 people are expected to attend the Trump event at Mount Rushmore on July 3rd. In Ontario, chiefs and lawyers representing 21 First Nations held a press conference to discuss a monumental advance in a century-old dispute. Dates have been set to determine compensation and settle matters in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Annuities case, which saw 21 First Nations defend the spirit and intent of treaty negotiations. It also challenged failures of the provincial and federal governments to increase the $4 annuity payments, while resource revenues went up in their territory.
Out west in the number treaties, that this could serve as a precedent and role model, because our annuities haven't gone up, and knowing since 1874 as well in the number treaty cases. So this is a huge victory for Treaty First Nations across Canada. And the Crown, again, has obligations. The honor of the Crown is very key. And implementing the treaty according to the spirit and intent is very key. So this is a very major victory going forward.
Well, efforts are underway to have the face of an Indigenous war hero on the $5 bill. That story and more still to come. Welcome back. The Bank of Canada is searching for a new historical figure to be shown on the $5 bill. As Daryl Stranger tells us, an online petition supporting war hero Tommy Prince to be the new face is gaining traction from MPs across the country and his own family.
Tommy Prince is the most decorated Canadian Indigenous soldier in history, and he could soon be the face of the new $5 bill set to be released in the next few years. The Bank of Canada put out a call for nominees at the beginning of this year, and the MP that represents the riding where Prince once lived thought he would be a perfect fit.
Tommy Prince is the person that needs to be on there, that represents the best ideals of bravery, of contribution and sacrifice, as well as needing to tell a story about reconciliation and systemic racism. And he encapsulates all of that in just his story.
From attending residential school to fighting in World War II and the Korean War and selling his war medals to help him survive, Prince's story is both inspiring and tragic. The Shadow Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations sees this as an opportunity to promote reconciliation.
The more momentum we get towards this, the better chance we have on getting Tommy Prince on the $5 bill. And I think if we can do that, I think that is another step we take to the path of reconciliation and recognize some of the mistakes of the past, such as residential schools, but also honoring Sergeant Tommy Prince in his career in the military and coming out as a war hero.
The petition had originated amongst Conservative MPs, and word soon got to the family. Tommy's grandson, Buddy, hopes Tommy's story and face on the new bill can be a symbol for equality.
As you know, he wasn't even allowed to vote. And this is one of the stronger things that I believe that he stood up for, was equal rights for all Indigenous people across the country and in the U.S., especially in this time of reconciliation. I think, going forward with the $5 bill and Tommy Prince's face representing that dollar bill, it's something that we all need to look at and say the impossible is no longer impossible.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
People have been finding new activities and hobbies to keep busy during the COVID-19 pandemic. As Daryl Stranger tells us, one man is using the extra time to teach others about Indigenous culture on the popular app TikTok.
We dance for all those who can't dance. We dance to heal and we dance to pray. This is who I am.
James Jones, better known by his TikTok handle Notorious Cree, started making videos in March when the thick of lockdowns were in effect. He has since grown a following of more than 600,000 people, and it's growing daily. He hopes his audience can learn something about Indigenous culture.
Donce, one of the most common questions I get asked is why I have long hair and why I wear my hair in braids. I was taught that as Indigenous people, our hair is an extension of our spirit, and to always braid my hair with positive thoughts so I can carry that energy with me throughout the day. It wasn't long ago my people were forced to cut their hair in residential schools, so I braid my hair to honor my ancestors.
Jones from Tall Cree First Nation in Alberta does everything from comedy sketches to Indigenous hoop dances and personal messages to share with his audience.
For so long, and even now today, our voices are not really heard on a lot of platforms. We're not really in any of the mainstream media a lot of times. So a lot of people they kind of forget that Indigenous people are still here and that they're strong, and there's a lot of us. So I think it's important to share my culture.
As an influencer, Jones also hopes he can have an impact on the younger generation.
I have a lot of younger youth and stuff that follow me on TikTok, and I feel like it's important for them to know about their culture as well, that we have a beautiful, strong culture, and that they can be proud. If young boys want to grow out their hair, then they should, and they should be proud of it.
What started out as something to pass the time has turned into a lifestyle. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
That's all the time we have for APTN National News Weekend. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.